Welcome to another episode and a very special episode of Talking with Kevin and Son. This is an episode that became very personal to me after conversations and watching a couple of videos. Started with the Ashton Kutcher video that was featured on YouTube of him sitting at Capitol Hill and talking about his organization for Thorn. It was also supported by an email I got from an NFL player, Tebow, talking about child sex trafficking and his foundation. And then my connection with Kristen Jackson Seymour. She is a lifelong advocate for women and girls across the globe. She is an active board member of FWA Survivors, Flying with Air Survivors, a national organization committed to supporting survivors of sex trafficking. And because of episodes 1, 2, and 3, we have to publicly ask anyone that has followed the first 3 episodes. We had mentioned a organization called Divas Who Win. I'm asking our viewers, because once it's out on the internet, there's nothing I can do about bringing it back, to understand that we are no longer in alignment with that organization. The direction on why we're doing this and the direction as to why their organization exists does not line up. So I'm asking anyone that has basically used that as a resource through us to delete mentally from that connection and stay focused on the conversation we have at hand. Today, we have a friend. We have someone that's part of the RMK family. She has been inducted to 100 Girls with Curls of dynamic women that are doing things on a global basis, uniting other women, and she's just that dynamic. I've invited Miss Charbonnet Patton to this to be part of this series because she is a philanthropist. She's a wife and mother, and has also been an advocate of working over a couple decades, if I can say that. She looks young, working on local and national organizations and assisting the aftercare women and children survivor. She is also, I can't even think of this, has a design company that focuses on artistic expressions with the purpose of seeing survivors made whole through her membership and through education and social enterprises. She is also a member of the Employees Against Sex Trafficking for the city of Boston, Massachusetts, the Attorney General's office, and as well as a member of the Newton Chamber of Commerce. She is also an executive director of Taking Back Ourselves, a national survivors support organization. Her philanthropy and efforts span across the globe, and with her commitment for freedom of women and children that have been assaulted and the need for tranquility and restoration, we invite Ms. Charbonnet Patton to be part of this fight, this war, to be part of the education, to be part of the healing, and to be that safe place when someone feels that they have no place to go. Charbonnet Patton, welcome to Talking with Kevin and Son, and the series of The Truth, the Lies of Sex Trafficking. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. Wow, how to follow that up, I don't know, but thank you for having me.
No, that's all right. I reached out to you because my first couple of interviews, we talked about this lifestyle, we talked about the experience. And one of the things is the reason why Kristen is here. I want to make sure that I don't bring up anything as a man that creates a trigger and re-traumatizes a victim that's already dealing with and trying to find answers to why life has happened to him that way. So she's my support system. I'm also going to ask you at the end of this interview to join the team and to join the fight. My purpose in doing this and my commitment to doing this and also my resources of doing this is because, one, sex trafficking and human slavery is not a disease. It's a pandemic that needs to be cured and totally eliminated. The victims need a safe place to go. They need to have access to resources, but they also need to have their stories to be told, which I'm providing this platform universally and globally for people to share their stories, no matter how dramatic or how easy it is for them to tell the story or how they struggle with the story. I want this to be a safe place. And I'm putting together a team, both in the public sector and in the private sector. The other conversation I've had for the last 3 weeks since we've been doing this is that the conversation amongst the Black community, we are either totally ignorant to, we're avoiding the conversation, or we're in total denial. And Charbonnet, you have a story that needs to be told. We featured you on One Queen and Two Kings, the other podcast that I host. You know, it's a show about strong women that's doing things to the community and having strong men support them, protect them, and running interference without holding them back. So with that, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about Chardonnay. Let our listeners know who you are.
Well, so my name is Charbonnet Patton. I am the president and founder of Anchored Inc. And I'm also the executive director of Taking Back Ourselves. Both support survivors of sexual assault and human trafficking. I have been in this work, in this fight for over a decade now. I started out, like many people, as a volunteer through a global organization, the A21 Campaign. And through my volunteering with them and just doing training with the Department of Homeland Security and just my own personal experiences as a survivor, this work has turned into something monumental for me. And being able to touch the lives of survivors everywhere, all over the nation, all over the globe, is what fuels me. And so I'm just so elated to have the opportunity to talk with you all today to provide that that next level of conversation for this fight that we're in, and for those who need the support.
Thank you.
Welcome, Charbonnet. Welcome. It's such an honor and a privilege to have you with us today as part of this series. And Kevin, of course, is the champion, and RMK Productions for using this platform to get the word out. And I feel very honored that you are with us today to help us understand through storytelling about your experience and how we can do better, because goodness knows we all can do better.
Absolutely.
Now, Charbonnet, in 2004, there were over 450,000 cases reported of missing children. In 2019, there were 7 million children reported, and most of those they fall under the National Center for Missing Children and Exploitation of Children. A lot of those children fall into this life of human sex trafficking and human slavery. Did not know until I met recently with an agent of Homeland Security in my health club here in Philadelphia, that one, Philadelphia was a hub. The local mall that I have in King of Prussia was another hub, and that the primary target or primary product was 9-year-old to 13-year-old Black and brown men of color. So says Ashton Kutcher, is that wealthy men travel across the globe in order just to have and pay a premium just to have sex with a little boy of color. We don't know about this as Black people. Why is this a conversation that we're not having?
Honestly, there's so many different reasons that this conversation is not happening. Within the Black community, the Black and brown community, a lot of times this conversation isn't being had because some of our own very people are the perpetrators of what's taking place. because we are significantly behind when it comes to resources and when it comes to support just on a systemic level, we fall into this gap. We fall into this category where we are not necessarily seen. And as you know, out of sight, out of mind, right? And so if we're not seen, then it's kind of hard to have the conversation of where are our children? Where are our young boys? Where are they going? A lot of times it gets lumped into, oh, it's gang activity, or it's lumped into, they're, going through a hard time, or they are runaways, or they're this, they're that. It's always lumped into something other than what it actually is. And so that brings a really hard opportunity for us to be able to reach out to those individuals, for us to be able to catch them before they fall through that crack, because there are so many obstacles against us, just as people of color, to where we just simply don't, like I said, it's out of sight, out of mind. Like even right now, I know we're talking about the young boys of color, right? And they're being trafficked, not just here in the United States, they're being trafficked all over the globe. There are over 40,000 women and children right now, African-American women and children right now, missing in the United States of America. A lot of those individuals are being trafficked, whether it's here or whether they have been trafficked out of the country. They are being trafficked right now.
63% reported are missing that are entering that world.
Yep. And so it's one of those situations where a lot of times people don't know what's happening to them. They don't know what's happening to us. And so they just assume, oh, they're runaways, or it's, gang activity, or it's, black on black crime, or brown on brown crime, or whatever the case may be. But it's never looked into deeply enough to see, oh, they are being hunted by predators and they are being trafficked by predators. I think that's where a lot of the gap happens.
I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you this anyway. You said they're being hunted like safaris. They're organized. How are they reaching our children?
They are reaching us in multiple facets. When I say we are being hunted, they are studying us. These predators, they are studying our habits. They are studying our moves. They are studying what we do, what we lack, and what we need. They are studying these things as a predator would study prey. That's literally what they're doing. And when they see the fact that, oh, this person doesn't, this person is living in poverty. This family is in poverty. And they take that information and they're able to either go through the parents or the lack thereof, whoever is the supervisory person in that child's life, and say, oh, we'll pay you X amount of dollars to let this kid come work for me. Or I'll pay you X amount of dollars to let me take this off your hands, because they're in a desperate situation, right? That happens. You also have situations where they are literally hunting us online. They are tricking our children, making them believe that they are friends, making them believe that they're here, right? They're tricking them online. They're tricking them through video games. They're tricking them through chat rooms, TikTok, whatever you want to call it. Like, they are infiltrating the spaces where we are, where our children are, right? Even like you were talking about earlier about your mall, right? How many times have you seen young black and brown boys dropped off at the mall just to go hang out? That happens often in multiple different cities. And they're not always paying attention to their surroundings. They're not always on high alert as they should be, right? And so you have situations where they're being taken, they're being tricked, they're being coerced, they're being forced, this is being done fraudulently. There's so many different ways that our children are just being targeted. And a lot of times, because of our surroundings, because of our dynamic, we just simply aren't aware because it's not talked about. It's just simply not talked about enough.
Charbonnet, what do you think in terms of when we use that language of being hunted and predators? I know often the press talks about and sort of does the typical victim blaming to say, oh, these are marginalized children, they're runaways, they're problem kids, they're foster kids, whatever, blame. But I feel so strongly that I have to point out, this is a very, very lucrative business. This sex trafficking on a global level is the number 2 black market generator. It's a $150 billion industry on a yearly basis, second only to arms dealing, and easier than becoming a drug dealer, much less overhead. And you don't have a product that you use once and dispose of. You get to use the product over and over and over again. These people have very sophisticated money-making systems in place. They don't just operate, down the street. Of course, they find and they hunt, just like a business would do the research on, who likes which brand of toothpaste or which kind of washing machine detergent. They do the research. And these kids are up against this humongous machine. And I feel like they don't have the defenses because A, they're not aware, and B, the trusted adults around them are not aware either in most cases, except for your random Hollywood movie, which tends to be a cursory glance and not always accurate.
I agree. This black market that our children are being sold on, and the people who are organizing this, you have to look at it, like you said, as a business, because that's exactly what it is to them, right? It's a business to them. And so when you think about it in that sense, there is supply and there is demand. Without the demand, there's no need for the supply. Right? Correct. So you have to look at it on so many different levels, right? The demand is that high, $150 billion per year. The last statistic that I saw said something along the lines of that's more than the NFL, the NBA, and another large sports arena.
Major League Baseball.
Major League Baseball. That's more than all 3 of them put together every single year.
It's larger than the GNP, gross national product, of many countries on the planet.
Right. It's huge and it's global.
No, Charbonnet, when I was talking to a young lady here that is a detective, and I'll leave her name nameless until she comes on the show. She's part of a detective for Homeland Security here in Philadelphia. And she talked about how the numbers were just staggering here, including the suburbs. And she said the number one problem and the greatest access to our children is technology and our cell phones. How do we have that conversation with mothers that get up in the morning? The cell phone is the kid's entertainment. The child is so attached to the cell phone. We use it as a way of punishing. And sometimes we give the child a cell phone or a computer because we're not being parents to our kids, and our appliances are babysitters. Can you
Absolutely.
explain to the people how they're getting access to that and what signs to look for?
Yes. So the thing about the technology side of this, right? As you said, parents, they give their children phones, they give them computers, they have PlayStations, they have Xboxes, they have all of this technology at their fingertips on a regular basis, right? If we are not actively monitoring those systems, like I said, our children are not aware. To them, oh, this is my friend. Oh, we just hang out. We play games together. This person is nice to me online, right? All of these different things are playing out, and the parents are not aware of what's happening. They're not paying attention, right? For me, I have a 13-year-old, a 16-year-old, and an 8-year-old. They all have technology, but I also make sure that I instill them in them. One, you don't give your address to anyone. I don't care who it is. You don't give your location to anyone. You don't share your location with anyone. You don't give personal information about you or your family to anyone over the internet ever for no reason. You don't do that, right? It's just putting a target on your back. It's making it easier for people who are already, again, hunting for us to find us. Okay. We have to, as parents, we have to get to a point to where we realize our children are literally being hunted. So many times we talk about human trafficking and we talk about sex trafficking, right? And that's if we're even talking about it. But when we do talk about it, it's a foreign thing. Most people look at it as if it's foreign, like it's something that just happens. Oh, that's only in third world countries, or that's only,
In the
in
movies.
Asia. Right. It's only in the movies. That's not real. That's not something that's true. Because our mindset has not grasped how very close the danger is, we are not preparing our children correctly. It takes more forethought than just to say, oh, just tell your kid, don't talk to strangers. When I was coming up, it was, stranger danger. Don't talk to strangers, right? It's so far beyond that now. It's so far past that because they don't present themselves as strangers anymore. They are literally befriending our children.
And
They're
grooming.
making
Grooming.
and grooming them. They're befriending them and grooming them.
Well,
And they're
define
making
grooming.
them. So grooming is when a predator, and I'm going to continue to call them that because that's what they are. When a predator is grooming an individual, they are getting to know them. They are getting to know their likes, their dislikes, what makes them happy, what makes them sad. They are literally positioning themselves to be in a position of a relationship, maybe not always a sexual relationship or anything like that, but a relationship nonetheless. And they gain the trust of their victim because of all that they've learned about them. You have to think about it in the sense of if you have, let's say you have a 9-year-old boy, right? Mom works 24/7, dad's not in the picture, or dad works 24/7 and mom's not in the picture, right? And I just need someone to talk to. I just need someone to confide in. I just need someone to be my friend, someone who cares about me, or at least it looks like they care about me and they care about how I feel and they care about what I do. They care about what makes me happy. They care about what makes me sad. They build this relationship with the victim to the point that when it's time for them to pounce, when it's time for that predator to pounce, the victim, they don't see it as pouncing unless some harm comes in the middle of that, right? And even then, they have psychologically already turned the mind of that child to believe that they are a friend, that they are an ally, that they are someone who would never do something like that to me, right? That is a part of grooming. it's basically turning the mindset of the victim to believe that they're a friend, or they're someone who cares about them or loves them.
And
And it
also
literally,
to turn them against the adults and
yeah,
family and teachers and siblings in their lives, to create a false narrative,
mhm,
to say, nobody cares about you the way I do. Nobody buys you these things like
yeah,
I do. Nobody spends the amount of time like I do. Your parents don't care, your teachers don't care, your siblings don't care. And that's how they drive the wedge.
Charbonnet.
they are trying to isolate them from their surroundings. They're trying to isolate them because they want them to be the only person, right? The predator wants that victim to feel as if they are the only one who cares about them in the world. And so they drive that wedge.
They thin
100%
out the
agree.
herd. They thin
Yep.
out the herd. Now, Charbonnet, you can share your story if you like, but I want to talk about um, how your story connects with Anchor, your company, and how you've created allyships, um, both publicly and privately, to support that. If you can share, because I'd like to give props to the people that are actively involved in making this change, especially those that are connected to your organization. And I also would like to open the door for those who are listening that are attached to either public funding or private funding to join this cause. This is a global public service announcement to stop this crap, in order to put
Yep.
the predators in a place where they can do our children no harm ever again, to allow a foundation where these young ladies and these young boys have a place where they can be free and be educated on how to exist in this system again in life. Because once the trauma is there, the trauma never goes away. I mean, um, I'm not going to go into my story again, but Charbonnet, you've been a champion to me. This has allowed me to open up and share. But let's talk about you. Let's talk about your story and Anchor.
Yep, absolutely. So um, I am one of the many millions. There are over 40 plus million of victims of human trafficking across the globe, over 40 million. Um, and to be honest with you, I never really saw myself as that until I went to therapy and until I went through the process of healing and all of that. So I wanted to start by saying, um, there are so many facets of human trafficking. There are so many different levels to it. And so, although a lot of people may not identify with my particular story, there are other ways of getting to the end result of what ends up happening in human trafficking. So, I want to precursor my story by saying that. For me, at the age of 12, my mother was in a long term relationship with a man who had been a part of my life since I was born. He was almost like a father figure to me. She worked two jobs, and I was home alone often with him. And what started as um, a grooming process, it started as a grooming process. What started as, you're so pretty, and you should get a boyfriend. All of these, now mind you, I'm 12, 13 years old. Okay, I'm just now coming into um, even looking at the opposite sex, if that makes sense. And so I need people to understand why catching a victim at such a very early age is important to a predator. At 12 years old, I'm just now coming into, the realization of the opposite sex. I'm just now, starting to have, you know, feelings, if in terms of that, right? Over the course of about a year, it was all talk. that talk then became touching on my breast, touching on my thighs, my legs, whatever, all the way up until the point of rape. And that was at 13 years old by my mom's boyfriend. From there, we moved. He was never prosecuted. And I came to find out at the age of 32 that he was doing the exact same thing to his own personal daughter. We moved. He was never prosecuted. Charges were never filed concerning him. And I grew up believing that that's what I was supposed to do. I grew up believing from the age of 13 on that in order for me to have a relationship of any kind, my body needed to be involved. That followed me through high school. I was overly sexualized in high school, hyperly sexualized in high school, to the point where I never had a boyfriend that was my age for the most part. And if I did, it lasted for maybe a week. Every man that I met after was at least 15 years older than me. Now, with that being said, I was 16 years old dating a 26-year-old, and my mother knew. I was 17 years old going to parties at nighttime and hanging out with adults. It grows into that kind of life, unfortunately. At the age of 18, I was hanging out with friends and I started dating, and this person basically kind of coerced me into stripping at 18 years old. I started stripping, and from stripping, that turned into you have to have sex with these customers that you're stripping for. That turned into basically me prostituting myself just for the relationship that I was in with that individual, which I never looked at that as sex trafficking until I went to therapy. I thought it was my fault. I thought, I did it to myself. It's like, no, actually, you were coerced into it and you were groomed into it from the relationship. So I need people to understand that a lot of times, many people think that sex trafficking is just forced trafficking. Like, oh, I'm forcing you to do it. That's true. The force is there, but coercion is just as powerful as force because you have turned the mind of the individual to believe that this is what's necessary for you to live. And so I was coerced into sex trafficking. From there, I finally was able to get away from that. And I tried to move on with life, so to speak. And once I hit around 22 years old, 23 years old, I came in contact with the A21 campaign. And that is how I started this journey of being a advocate for survivors, because my mind was so twisted and turned and warped from all the way from the grooming of me at age 11, 12, 13 years old, all the way up to 18, 19 years old. My mind was so twisted and so warped by the things that had already taken place in my life, the things that had already happened to me. I didn't even know that I was a victim of sex trafficking. I was told that I was a prostitute, or I was just a whore, or when I was younger, I was just told, oh, she's promiscuous and she's fast, or whatever you want to call it. Like, these are the terms that were used to describe what I was doing in response to what was happening to me. I didn't figure out and find out until I got in contact with the A21 campaign that I was actually trafficked. I was actually a victim of sex trafficking, and I didn't even know it.
And these are also the
And
signs
that
of,
happens a lot.
yeah.
When you
the-
see victims later on.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. I was going to say these are also the signs of warnings for help when you are in positions as an educator, an employer, family, or friends. Is that we turn a blind eye to these signs that our children are being damaged, are being manipulated. And we put these titles on there because we don't want to identify what is real and what we think is real. And I'll let you go on. I'm sorry.
No. Yes, no, I agree. Like, if anyone would have simply caught me when I turned, the first rape that happened at 13, I had a nervous breakdown in school. Like, literally, we were in a dare assembly, and I saw something that triggered me on the screen. I started screaming in the middle of the assembly. I had a whole breakdown, only for the counselor to call my mom, to tell my mom, I think something has happened to your daughter. And for my mom to ask the predator if it's what was true and if it was what happened. Of course he said no, it didn't happen. But why would why would a 13-year-old girl have a complete breakdown in front of 500, 600, 700 kids? Mind you, this is middle school we're talking about. That's not a normal reaction to when you're in middle school. Like, that's just not something that happens, okay? So the fact that these things are happening and it's being overlooked, it just grows from there, because you grow up and you believe nobody cares. Nobody cares about what happened to me. This was supposed to happen. It was okay that it happened because nobody cared. Nobody did anything. This is what the mind of a young girl thinks. And I'm sure it's probably the same for young boys who are dealing with the same thing.
It's actually for men, especially for a Black man, to admit that you've been put into this, because we have so many biases amongst the races, especially supposed to be a strong Black man. Is that this happens, you get labeled punk, sissy, and whatever the cases may be. And we get silenced before we speak. Yeah. So I think, I won't say just for a Black man, it's probably for any man, is that we suppress this, and we ultimately end up, most of us, when you look at statistics, when they say that most predators were preyed upon because they don't know any better. I'm going to let you finish. Go ahead and do your thing. And you know why.
No, but I agree with you. Yes, I do. But I agree with you 100%. But when I say the term nobody cares, you have to look at that in the term of what you just said, right? What happens to young boys, they say within themselves, right? Oh, I can't say anything like this to somebody because they're going to think I'm this, they're going to think I'm that. Subconsciously, you're basically telling you that nobody cares about what happened to you. Like, that's the subconscious part of that. You're telling yourself in that moment, the moment that that young boy says, I can't say anything, right there, that's when that young boy is telling themselves, no one cares about what happened to me. They only care about what I see, what they see on the outside, or how I'm acting on the outside. it's the same, just young girls happen to literally say it within themselves, no one cares. We're both saying the same thing. We're both saying the same thing to ourselves. No one cares. And if no one cares, then the next time that you're being groomed, because for me, it kept happening by different people. The next time it happens, it's like, oh, this is supposedly okay. There's no reason to tell anybody because nothing's going to happen. Or there's no reason to speak about it because apparently this is supposed to be okay because nothing happened the first time.
No one cares.
And you grow. No one cares, right? And so you grow up feeling like no one cares. So when that moment, right, you're 18 years old, and this is my case, right? You get pulled into a bathroom at a party and you're expected to perform. No one cares. No one cares.
Until today.
And so, right. And so for me, it was a saving grace, I would say, getting to the point to where I found the A21 campaign. That was like a saving grace for me. Because it wasn't until then that I realized, oh my goodness, this is not what should have been happening. This is not, and I was 22 years old, 23 years old. This is not what was supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to grow up this way. I wasn't supposed to have these feelings and emotions. This was not supposed to happen to me, and it was not my fault. To note, I went from 13 years old to 23. That's 10 years of my life believing that it was okay. For 10 years, the most important years of my life. These are the growing years of my life. These are the years where I'm learning about life. These are the years that I'm supposed to be cultivating who I am, only to figure out, oh, you never knew who you were because your mind was twisted before you even figured out who you were. This is why we have to catch them early. This is why we have to stop it now. At such a young age, you say you have children 9 years old, 10 years old, 11. Can you imagine? You have a bunch of 9-year-old, 10-year-old boys, 9-year-old, 10-year-old girls walking around in their minds before they have even had the opportunity to figure out who they are. Their minds have been warped already. And no one is doing anything about it because the parents are working. The parents are busy. Grandma's busy. Uncle's busy. My friends, I can't tell my friends. Can't talk to them about it. Can't talk to anybody about it. So that's the prime moment when the predator can step in and say, hey, I care about you. Hey, you can talk to me about anything.
And sometimes those friends are groomers also. They've been taught to recruit people.
They have.
It's the perfect storm.
It is.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the A21 program and how we can get in touch with them and support them, and how do we get involved with Anchor in your programs?
Absolutely. So the A21 campaign is a global survivor organization. They work with children, they work with men, they work with women, and they work with all forms of human trafficking, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, like you name it, they deal with it. They are also a part of the It's a Penalty campaign. So when you guys see that around Super Bowl season and things of that nature, you'll start to see the It's a Penalty campaigns going up. I'm pretty sure Tim Tebow probably knows about that campaign. Christine Kane and her husband are the founders of A21. They've been doing this for over a decade. I actually started volunteering with that organization, I believe maybe 1 year after their inception. And so I've been dealing with them about as long as I've been in this fight for the most part. And so you can contact them at the A21 or A21.org. and get in contact with them, donate to their operations. They have task force, they have safe homes, they have survivor organizations, they have therapy for survivors. They have so many different programs and resources available. So if you have the opportunity to get in contact with them or support their organization, please do. For Anchored Inc., because we are still very young in our efforts, we plan to build a survivor safe home development community, and we've already started to scout out land for that. However, we are still very young in our processes. And so for now, what we do is provide aftercare resources to local and national safe homes for survivors. So our care packages, basically the way our program works, we have a retail store, which is Anchored Inc. And I pretty much 70% of the items that you see on our website or in our store in Massachusetts are made by me as a survivor. These are all things that I used, that I had to help me through my healing process. And so when you see, the hand soaps, the bath salts, the pillows, like all of those things are things that have helped me over the course of my healing journey. And so all of those products, anytime anyone purchases anything from Anchored Inc., it triggers our care package program. And so we make these care packages with essential items in them. Right now, our focus are women and children. We are hoping to branch out and grow into the men's sector eventually as well. But we place essential aftercare items. For me, after going to hospitals and dealing with, that whole process, which that's another story within itself, those aftercare resources are very much needed. So for women, you have feminine hygiene products and undergarments and journals and things that just are very necessary to help get women and children through those immediate days after rescue. That is kind of what happens with our care package program. And we send those out free of charge to the local and national safe homes that we work with. Currently, we have 4 safe homes that we work with directly, and we are taking on more even now. And so that's kind of how Anchored Inc. works. Once we continue to grow, we actually have a crowdfunding campaign up right now through patronicity.com/Anchored Inc., where you can help us grow our current facilities as we are attempting to grow. We have a storefront right now where we house all of our care package inventory and where we package everything. Of course, you can come and purchase at the store as well, but that's where a lot of the work happens. And so because of the pandemic and because the numbers of human trafficking victims has skyrocketed very quickly during this pandemic, we have had to send out thousands of care packages. And we are now at a point to where we need more space. We need to be able to get in more inventory to where we can send out more care packages and house everything. And so we are hoping that we can do that through our crowdfunding campaign right now. But you can catch us at anchoredinc.com. You can follow us at Anchored Inc. on all social media platforms. I post information not only about our partners that we work with, but also just for survivors in general. A lot of times this work gets really technical sometimes, and people begin to only see the numbers and they only get to see the statistics and they don't see the face. They don't see the faces behind what's happening and the humanity behind what's happening. And so I try to differentiate my platform between both business and support for survivors, because that is very much needed. And if I can't necessarily get directly to a survivor, at least my voice can get to them. And so that is my hope through all of the platforms that I'm on right now. So go out and support and do what you guys can, for sure.
And let me say this to my listeners, and I'm going to say, Pay attention to what I'm saying. If you can spend $100 billion to send a celebrity into space for 14 and a half minutes, and not saying I'm not impressed, but I'm not impressed. Her ass right now is a small percentage of what you can do. You can build a safe house in every single city in the United States of America for what you did for 14 minutes. If you happen to be one of those people, especially in Philadelphia on the main line, that happens to have unlimited resources, and you'd rather spend $500,000 on a car to drive to and from your fancy health club, you can take half of that money and build a safe house in your community. And if you don't think I'm talking to you, look at your son or your daughter's TikTok account and find out why they're posing all day long in the gym in their bathing suits and their underwear. And they've got 200,000 likes and no sponsorship. And ask yourself, is your daughter advertisement for someone that's going to groom her, or she has been groomed, and your son also? And in the event that you're one of these people, that for some reason your child does not come home and you have resources in order to combat this problem and you've done nothing about it, look in the mirror. Because if you're part of the RMK family, you have a higher call to action. And if you're part of someone that's just watching this video to sensationalize a trauma, I've brought to you people that are sharing their story because they want to help. Don't look at them as victims. Look at these people as warriors and join the team to be disciples of a higher calling. RMK Productions and Kevin McLemore personally have committed our personal resources in order to bring this to you. You know, I do want to talk about Charbonnet and her life as it exists now, because she is a mother and a wife. I know it's hard to have a relationship when you have these traumas because they never go away. I want you to share those stories because there is hope. And that's what we exist for, helping people every single day. So Charbonnet, if you don't mind sharing.
Yes, of course. So I am blessed to have an amazing husband. And I need people to understand, as a survivor, we never forget. We don't get that luxury. We don't get the luxury of forgetting what has happened to us. We can heal. We can feel better. We can become better individuals, but we never forget. And so I often have moments of remembrance. And to have someone like my husband, Myron, who his patience and his care, his level of care, not just for me, but for what has happened to me. Even when he wasn't, he was not in my mind. We had never met. These are all things that happened prior to him knowing me, right? His level of care for not just me, but for this cause is more than admirable. It's not an easy task to be married to a survivor, knowing that they can't forget. It's not an easy task at all. And so I take my hat off to him. I'm not wearing one right now, but he gets it. I take my hat off to him as much as I can, because people need to understand I can only be as strong as I am because I have the amazing support of an amazing individual in my corner. And so I take my hat off to my husband for that. My children, I have a bonus daughter, and she's 16, and I love her so very much. And I do my best to talk to her about these things because she's a prime target. She really is. She's beautiful, and she's very active on social media. And while I love her confidence and I love who she is, it scares me to no end. And so I'm constantly trying to make sure that she knows, look out, keep your eyes peeled. you know. Same thing for my boys. I have a 13-year-old son and I have an 8-year-old son. And they both know, like they are very much aware. Keep your eyes peeled. Everybody is not a friend. Like, I make sure that I am teaching them these things. And we've gotten to a point to where now it's not scary. Now it's just moms talking to us about what's going on. And they understand that. And so um they have been amazing. Like, I do all of this work and I'm always on interviews and I'm always at the store or doing something like that. And they have just been so very understanding. And so I take my hats off to them as well. Just because it takes a lot of time. It takes so much time up, you know? And so my family is just everything to me. And I say that because I didn't think I would have one at one point. I didn't think this would be my life. I always wanted it to be my life, but I didn't think it would ever become my life. Um, I was actually married prior to this. I was my ex-husband. We had a domestic situation, and he attempted to rape me, and our children were in the other room. And so I never thought that this would be my life. I never thought I would get to a point of such freedom within myself that now I can talk about it without breaking down. I can talk about it and explain it to people without feeling like I'm about to, go into a catatonic moment. So I want survivors to know, like, there's another side. It's not all pain and grief. It doesn't stay that way. You get to make the choice. You get to decide, I'm either going to be a victim for the rest of my life, or I'm going to turn the page and I'm going to become a survivor for the rest of my life. And I'm okay with being a survivor for the rest of my life. I can't change what happened in the past, but I can change what happens in the future. And so being in a position now to where I have my own business, I have my own organization. I'm the executive director of another survivor organization, TBO, Taking Back Ourselves. And they actually provide, you know, healing and therapy services, something that Anchored Inc. is not in the position to do right now. And so just becoming the executive director of that organization has helped fuel things even more, because now not only do I get the opportunity to provide aftercare services in terms of resources, but I also get to provide aftercare services in terms of mental assistance, mental health, and wellness for survivors. And this is something that is so very needed. And so I need survivors to understand, like, it
is.
The most horrible thing in the world has happened to you. That's how we see that, right? The most horrible thing in the world has happened to you, but that does not define who you are. That is not who you are. It is something that someone tried to place on you. That's not who you are. You get to be who you want to be. You get to choose and decide, I'm going to be this, right? I went from teaching middle school, where I've actually come in contact with young girls in my teaching career, where they were dealing with some of the same very things that I was dealing with at their age. I had the opportunity to mentor those young girls. I had the opportunity to show those young girls, you can do this. You don't have to stay this person. You don't have to be broken for the rest of your life. You can put the pieces back together and it can turn into a beautiful mosaic. And that's okay. That's okay. Mosaics are expensive too. They're not cheap.
Yes.
They're expensive too. And so they need to know that. And so for me, just being in this position to show people, we are not what happened to us. We are so much more than that. And although whoever did what they did to that person, to us, us survivors, we can't change that, but we can change it for somebody else. We can make sure that the next person knows this doesn't have to be you. We can change it and we can fix it. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take all of us. There's millions of people being hurt by this. And I am only one person. Kevin is only one person. Christine is only one person. But when you put all of us one persons together, we can make some damage happen for these pedophiles. And that's the plan. That's the goal. Like, I need to put a whole foothold, a mud hole into this black market situation that they have going on. And I think we can do that as long as we're all on the same page and we understand what we need to do. And the first part of that is bringing awareness. We all need to know
talking about it,
happening.
Talking about it.
Yes, yes. And I can't find a better segue to the next question. And we can actually talk about this for the next 24 hours, the next 72 hours, the next 365 days a year. And I'm sure this is not our last conversation on having this. And this platform is yours today, tomorrow, next year, the year after. We all have something that we need. And I always ask 90% of my guests, and depends on which day I say, it could be 80%, 60%, sometimes 100% of my guests, depends on the guest. So, my trolls out there, don't hold me to it. When you have a couple of concussions, you remember what you can for that moment, and whatever comes out is facts for that day. So I laugh about it. But I will ask you your ask. If you had one wish, and I know this is a little crazy to ask for, but I've always learned, coming from my faith, if you ask, you shall receive. And that's what God always tells you. If you had that one ask, A-S-K, what would it be?
Ooh. If I had to pick one ask right now, because I know what I'm trying to do and what
Charbonnet, you can make a whole freaking list because someone's going to answer it. Go ahead.
I could. If I had one ask, but just for the one, please, if you can, share this with your networks, share it with your family, share it with your friends, share it with your workers, your coworkers, your bosses, share it with everyone. I need your support for Anchored Inc. to grow and touch the lives of more survivors. I need your help with that. I can't do that by myself. I'm trying to right now, and we've made some headway, but I can make more headway if you guys are on my team and that we are working this thing together. Please go to patronicity.com/Anchored Inc. and donate. I don't care if it's $1, whatever you can do. I need your help. We are growing and we have over 1,000 care packages that need to go out. We have even more than that probably need to go out within the next couple of months, just because we're on a backlog from this pandemic. So if I had one ask for today, please go support our crowdfunding campaign with Patronicity. We need to be able to grow our facilities in order to gain more traction and in order to take on more safe homes. There are safe homes all over the United States that we are trying to help. We're trying to help them with resources so they don't go under. One of the biggest things that happens with survivors, with victims before they become survivors, is that they are potentially rescued and they are maybe taken to a shelter or something to that effect. But if that shelter cannot sustain what that victim needs, they never become a survivor because they are still at risk. They are still at risk. In order for them to not be at risk, we need the resources to make sure that we take them out of that environment. We have to be able to help the victim become a survivor. A victim stays a victim until they get what they need to no longer be one. If you can help us with that, please do so. Again, it's patronicity.com/Anchored Inc. If you want to donate on our website, it's www.anchoredinc.com. You can go to the About Us page and you can donate there as well. But we need the support because survivors need the support. They can't move forward with their journey and with their healing journey until they have what they need. If they don't have what they need, they never become survivors. They stay victims. That's my one ask.
All right. Boy, you did that like you were running the show yourself. That was great. What do you? I know my purpose was to enlighten, especially the Black community and all communities, and unite people. What do you want them to take away from this interview?
Your children are being hunted. No qualms about that. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Your children are being hunted. The same way you go out fishing and you go to a certain spot because you know that's where the fish are going to be and you know how to be quiet, or the same way you hunt deer or whatever it is that you do. Your children are being hunted. You have to stop that from happening. That's not something I can do for you. I can tell you what's happening. I can bring awareness, but I cannot stop it happening for you because I don't live with you. You live with your children. Be their protector. Protect your children. Protect them.
And think about it in terms of, like, you would tell a child, you don't run out into the street. You don't play,
Yes.
your games in the middle of a freeway because it's dangerous.
Yes.
This is how we have to have this conversation. Has to be on a regular daily basis. We say to our little kids, look both ways before you cross. We give them tools.
Yep.
This is a tool for survival and
Tools for
being hunted successfully.
Yep. They
And
need tools.
the conversation has to keep going. And Charbonnet, you are such a big part of that.
Yep.
All right, Charbonnet, I want to say thank you. For those that can't see me, I am bowing to the Queen. 100 girls of curls. She is a powerful force to be reckoned with. She is a survivor. She's an educator. She's an example of what you can become when you decide to become it. She is a voice and a resource. Our mission at RMK Production is to uplift through the power of your voice, to inspire and share stories and experiences and perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is to hope, helping other people every single day. For those of you that have tuned in and listened to us, we have covered a lot of information. I hope you've taken notes and you've made notes. If you're in a position to make a difference and you do not do so, you're just as empowered of the people that are part of the problem versus the solution. Change can only happen if you acknowledge and give a voice to it. Change can only happen if you show up in your present. Her ask is not that big. You think about it. Take one car to your driveway and drive 3 instead of 4. Look at the size of the diamond ring that's on your hand. $50,000 doesn't determine how much she loves you. It just determines how much you're showing off. If you can save a child from the trauma of having their story being featured on this, it is your responsibility to do so. Follow Charbonnet's lead and share this. Don't just view it, share it. There's 241 million people on this planet. At least 2 million of those people care. Share it. If you want more information about this, go to rmkproductions.net or follow us on RMK Productions and Network on our YouTube page. My grandfather always said, when you get to a position you can help someone else, it is your duty to do so. Reach one, teach one. And now I'll fade to black, and we're out.